Pela primeira vez na história, as autoridades de fronteiras dos Estados Unidos apreenderam, num período de 1 ano, mais de 2 milhões de pessoas na fronteira com o México. O recorde foi noticiado nos principais jornais do país e serviu para inflamar a narrativa de que os estadunidenses enfrentam uma crise de migração.
But our immigration system is broken. Congress has not been able to enact immigration reform, which we desperately need. And there is a backlog and a bottleneck of people, particularly on the US-Mexico border. And so the Biden administration is trying to decide how to handle that backlog as well as allow people who truly fear persecution to enter the United States. Just today, the Biden administration announced that it plans to set up special dedicated courts to people who are on the US-Mexico border to process their cases more quickly and fairly. So we'll have to see how that works out, but at least it's a promising first step.
Enquanto isso não acontece, a narrativa que ganha força é aquela que vilaniza o imigrante e não as condições sociais que forçam a migração. Por outro lado, o movimento No Borders, que defende um mundo sem fronteiras, avança em vários países.
What it would look like would have to be, first and foremost, not a capitalist world. So in a capitalist world, it's true, no borders would be a race to the bottom. So it would be a world where people's labor and where people's labor was respected. It would also be a world that was not ruled by the regime of nation states. Because I think the thing with nation states is that you have to have borders if you have nation state rule. I mean, there's no way around it. So we have to think about other ways of ruling ourselves, which are not about nation states. And I think that there are lots of ways in which there's lots of places, even particularly at borders, where you can see this happening, where you see people working together, where you see them, including migrants, cooperating together and working so that they can make the move across nation-state borders.
Antes de assistirmos à queda das fronteiras físicas, é preciso derrubar alguns dos conceitos seculares que mantêm os muros de pé. E aqui estamos falando do nacionalismo e de tudo que o sustenta.
Other things that come into play in that discussion is things like racism, which often goes along with nationalism, and then theological, religious things, which is a problem in the Middle East, especially, but how people align themselves more with their religion, which exists in kind of a region, than they do with the actual nation-state country that they're in.
I think that nationalism is a fundamental problem of our age, and I think that it's so imbued in our way of thinking. I just think we have been taught to imagine the world as kind of naturally cut up into these spaces, and that we naturally belong to a certain space, and maybe some people transgress or they migrate, but actually we belong to our nation. But also, I think for me, fundamentally bound up with ideas of race and ethnicity. And I think that the idea of the nation means that there will always be people who don't belong to the nation. The nation is inevitably, I think, bound up with ideas of blood, of ancestry, of who my parents were, my grandparents, and that is dangerous.
Pensar na realidade de um mundo sem fronteiras é abraçar uma fantasia, mas isso também é uma escolha, como bem observou Anderson.
I accept that this sounds very utopian, but I would also like to say that the idea that we can live in a world where states have sealed up control of their borders, that's also utopian, you might say, or dystopian, because borders do not let you control totally movement. We saw with Trump, wasn't possible, didn't happen. So let's have a more positive fantasy. And also, I think that it's important to say that what we decide is possible is actually a political decision.